When the first people in America started playing lacrosse centuries ago, the game served many purposes. It was played to amuse the creator, train young men for war, and settle disputes between different tribes. To the modern Iroquois, lacrosse is a very important part of their social, cultural, and spiritual heritage. It is an enjoyable way for the Iroquois to compete amongst themselves, and a way for the young people to demonstrate their athletic skills to the benefit of their communities. Lacrosse is still played to restore harmony to the people and their natural world. During specially called ceremonial medicine games, lacrosse is played to heal people. In the early days of the game, there were very few rules. Games could last a few days in duration. The goals would range from 500 yards to several miles apart, and there were no limits to the number of players on the field, and it was not uncommon to have 1,000 players in each game at the same time. Jean de Brebeuf, a French Jesuit missionary, saw the Iroquois playing the game in 1637 and was the first European to report on the game. Some say that when he saw the stick they were using, he thought of a staff carried by the bishops called a crosier. From this came the name lacrosse. In 1856, a Canadian dentist and sports journalist, William Beers, founded the Montreal Lacrosse Club. Beers tirelessly promoted lacrosse as Canadian national sport. Beers and the Montreal Lacrosse Club created a structural sport that captured the imagination of a young nation. They took a native game with all its beauty, skill, and dedication of spirit and molded it into a competitive sport which won the hearts of a young country. Beers claimed that the indigenous game did not suffer from the barroom association of the American sports or the snobbiness of the British sports. The immigrants and Canadian-born professionals, merchants, and middle class adopted and adapted lacrosse and played it on the streets and in the parks of their cities. In 1867, Beers began to codify the game with rules and regulations which imposed order and imbued the game with gentlemanly values. He shortened the length of the game. Remember, it was originally any amount of time, sometimes days on end, reduced the number of players from the thousands to 12 per team, and replaced the deerskin ball with a hard rubber one. In the early years of club lacrosse, native teams were indispensable. They basically provided the only challenging competition and were the source of all the whites' knowledge of the game. As soon as there were enough white teams, the natives' importance as players began to wane, and the amateur rules adopted in 1880 virtually excluded them from club play. Beers claimed that the application of science rendered lacrosse as civilized, thus legitimizing the gradual exclusion of the native players from the game on the grounds that it was only the white players who could develop its science. Shut out from the 12-on-12 field game at the highest level, the natives competed in obscurity until box lacrosse, a faster, more violent 6-on-6 version of lacrosse invented in 1930 to take advantage of the unused hockey rinks. This game has now become the game of choice for the Iroquois because of its speed and physical play. The style of the game is quick, accelerated by the close confines of the box and the use of a shot clock. The shot clock requires that a team must take a shot within 30 seconds of gaining possession. The goals are also much smaller than in field lacrosse, measuring 4 feet wide by 4 feet tall. Like hockey, it moves with no timeouts or no out of bounds. It seems like a demolition of nosedives and suicidal collisions on a concrete floor, sometimes covered by AstroTurf, sometimes not. Iroquois have been raised on box lacrosse, but they still adapt very well to the field version of the game. Over 20 years ago, the Iroquois Nation established a national lacrosse team. What's at stake for the Iroquois is their culture, their identity, and their tribes. After fighting off attempts at assimilation for more than a century, issues of sovereignty strike a deep chord for many Native Americans. At the recent World Lacrosse Championships, the Iroquois National Lacrosse Team was included in the tournament. The inclusion was not a ceremonial nod to the past, because the Iroquois were the fourth-ranked team in the world. Unfortunately, they were not allowed to attend. The passports the Iroquois sovereign nation did not contain the proper radio frequency identification chips. The Iroquois were offered a choice. If they wanted to attend the tournament, they could accept either the United States or a Canadian passport, which would solve everything, or they could accept a one-time waiver. The Iroquois representing their own nation and were not interested in traveling on the passport of a competitor. So instead, they opted for the waiver. Thinking that they were good to attend, they left for New York to board their plane for England. At the last minute, the United Kingdom demanded assurance that the United States would guarantee re-entry for the Iroquois, which the State Department declined to provide. This derailed the World Championship aspirations of the Iroquois national team. Though the Iroquois had participated in the tournament as an independent nation for the last 27 years on their own passports, heightened security demands in a post-9/11 world now excluded them. The Iroquois, however, vowed to be ready for the indoor championships next year and once again represent the people who invented the game.